resilience.
Yeah. All right, so the lupus disease recently claimed the lives of two public figures, comedian and broadcaster Elva Ruddock, as well as Miss Jamaica. Well, she wasn't Miss Jamaica Universe, but she was in that contest in 2014, Zandria Bailey. This morning we aim to raise awareness by shedding some light on how lupus affects the body and how we could treat it. And to help us to do all of that is Dr. Desiree Toller-Reed, rheumatologist and lupus specialist. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to Smile Jamaica.
Thank you.
According to noted rheumatologist Dr. Desiree Toller-Reed, Jamaican doctors are not equipped to properly diagnose the autoimmune disease because of the unavailability of a particular type of testing equipment on the island. First, is that exactly what you said?
Certainly not in so many words, but it does highlight some limitations that we're actually working with and that we hope some fundraising efforts coming up will help us to advance.
So we haven't even got to the part whether we could treat it or not, but you're suggesting maybe there's a difficulty to even diagnose it.
Yes. So the diagnosis of lupus can be very complex. It can be difficult. There are some people who are very easily diagnosed because of the way they present. It's very typical. They may have a lot of rashes, they may have the hair falling out, the joint pains, and other things that may be obvious or that doctors recognize these patterns right away. And then there are other people who present in other ways that may be more subtle. And so you actually need the benefit of sophisticated tests to help confirm the diagnosis if you suspect it, and also distinguish it from other conditions that may mimic it. So that's one aspect.
Sophisticated tests would mean sophisticated machines.
Yes.
And we don't have those machines.
We have some limitations in terms of the technology related to those. So, for instance, one of the ways that we not only diagnose, but we evaluate a patient, because evaluation is a broad assessment, because you may know somebody has a condition, but people can be so different, presented so many different ways. You want to know the people who are at risk for certain serious complications. And so part of the evaluation of the patient is to be able to detect these patients. And one of the tools that we use is antibody profiling. So there are ways to detect what we call autoantibodies. So I don't know if I should explain that a little bit.
As quickly as you can.
So lupus is a disorder of the immune system.
Right.
The immune system are the cells and tissues in our bodies that provide a defense mechanism. They detect outside threats and attack them in a targeted way that we call inflammation. And in lupus, this inflammation is driven by, in lupus there's an abnormality of this process. The immune system is no longer being properly regulated, and so it instead turns against healthy tissues.
Okay.
And this attack to the tissues is often mediated by what we call antibodies. Some antibodies are identifiable as being linked more with certain manifestations of the disease. For instance, there are some people who are at risk for stroke, heart attack, lung clots, what we call pulmonary embolism, miscarriages, or even a stillbirth during pregnancy, because of certain tendencies that could be detected or identified through antibody profiling.
Zandra was in the United States when she died, so I don't know what obtained there. But is there a suggestion that some of the folks here in Jamaica who probably would have lost their lives would be because we don't have this equipment? Is that a suggestion?
It's possible. It's hard to say, but it's possible because, for instance, the complications that I list can be very serious complications that can strike suddenly, but they're also very often preventable complications. So you may not know that you're at risk for a stroke. You may not know that you're at risk for a miscarriage because of these particular antibodies that exist.
Can
and
it
if
be
you
cured?
don't know. We don't have a cure for lupus yet.
But it can be controlled?
But it can be treated, can be controlled. It requires a lot of monitoring.
Yeah.
and it requires consistent access to the right treatments.
This article also said that in a 2015 interview, he said 2,000 people in a clinic, 40% had lupus. That's incredibly high, isn't it?
Yes, and it varies. I mean, we'd have different clinics, but there are certain days where we see our high-risk patients, and we know that a large proportion of those patients will have lupus.
So it's quite prevalent
So I have hundreds
in Jamaica.
of patients with lupus, yes. I have hundreds of patients with lupus personally. Wow. Other rheumatologists have more, and we're pretty certain that the people living with lupus are probably in the thousands.
Wow. You also said it can cost a Jamaican with lupus over $100,000 per month for treatment. That still obtains
That
now?
certainly can be the case, yes.
Can be, or
yes,
is the case?
It varies because because lupus can vary so much in terms of how serious it is. Some people have milder forms, some people have more severe forms. And the treatments for certain severe forms, for instance, people with kidney involvement or nervous system involvement, requires medications that may be priced higher. And to take a sufficient dose can often run you, if you're in private care, into that kind of money.
The Sigma Run will help you guys this year. What do you want that money for?
So we have a number of projects, but of course one of the key ones will be the availability or of this particular kind of testing equipment we call a microplate reader, automated microplate reader, which is for, as we talked about, antibody profiling. Obviously, we have what we do at the foundation is we do a lot of providing information, a lot of education, and we also provide support. Yeah. We'd certainly like to be able to have care packages for people who are newly diagnosed and be able to...
So that reader will save lives?
The microplate reader, definitely.
Right now, I said the prevalence, but right now, how bad is it? How high is it?
We don't have exact figures for lupus anywhere, but estimates in populations such as ours, because we're an Afro-Caribbean population, can run you as high as 1 in 250 persons.
Wow, that's very high.
So that's a very high.
Final question that we have to go. Do I feel anything? Do I know that something is not right with me? Because you're not born with lupus, are you?
No.
All right.
But
so
yes.
When it comes on, can I tell that something not right here?
Most people know that something is wrong. It may happen very quickly. Somebody may have non-specific symptoms such as unusual fevers, develop joint pain, unusual rashes on the face or areas where sun exposed,
Well, that
hair
sounds
falling
almost
out.
like what they say about dengue.
Yes, but this would be more persistent, going on over time, and you know, the whole point is that these are symptoms that would lead you to be checked out.
Just go to the doctor.
Right. You can't necessarily interpret everything together immediately, and neither can the doctor. The doctor will even need to examine you and may need to do further tests to decide what's happening. So that's the key.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us.
A tough job, don't you? Dr. Desiree Tullow-Reid, rheumatologist and lupus specialist, trying to help us to better understand the lupus disease. All right, so from obstacles to opportunities, we speak with one young lady who is actually living with lupus and is using her experience to help others through her business. Johnny Dale from Morgan's Creek will speak with Empress when we come back. So come.